So this is the cold chamber. It's basically a giant refrigerator for testing the thermal performance of caravans. And that's pretty much all I can tell you about it right now. So I'm going to get inside the van and meet someone who knows an awful lot more. So Martin, tell us a bit more about this shiny white space we're sitting in.
Well, we're in the Truma Climate Centre. This is a building that we built at the end of 2012. Quite simply, this is a large refrigerator. We also have the ability to turn the button the other way and make it a warm centre. And we built this place really to test British-made caravans and motorhomes, just to check their thermal insulation.
And how exactly does it work?
Well, if your viewers can forgive me for a second in being a little bit too techie, the procedure is quite detailed actually, and it's set out in a European standard. We bring a caravan or a motorhome in on the first day, and then our engineers actually spend some time putting probes into the caravan or the motorhome. This is basically a temperature gauge, and they're put in various specific areas of the caravan or the motorhome. The test dictates that you should put 5 probes in there, 4 in the corners and 1 in the centre. Those probes then pass to our control room, which is linked to a computer, so the temperatures inside and outside the caravan can be monitored. At the end of the first day, we'll actually open all the caravan windows, doors, hatches, and we'll then turn the refrigerator on. The standard says we should turn it to -15, and then we cool down the caravan or the motorhome all night. It's technically known as a soak, but what that ensures is that all the areas of the caravan or the motorhome are brought down to -15 degrees. Now, bright and early the next morning, we'll actually pop in, shut all the windows, doors and hatches, and actually from our control room, which you'll see later, we can actually turn the heating on within the caravan or motorhome. Now, the test dictates that within 4 hours, we should be able to warm the interior area of the caravan or motorhome up to 20 degrees from its original setting of -15. So that's quite a lot of work for the heating system in conjunction with the insulation in the caravan or motorhome to do. In our control room, we'll monitor that very, very carefully, and the caravan or motorhome gets a pass if it has reached that 20 degrees within 4 hours.
So is that then the end of the test?
No, it's actually just part 1 of a 3-step process. The second part of the test is to actually stabilise the temperature at 20 degrees. You're allowed a tolerance of plus or -2 degrees during this point, but the aim is to control the temperature rather than to keep it rising. During this period as well, we'll measure the energy used, the gas and electric, just to give a good indication of how thermally well insulated the product is. Providing that's gone all right, then the third and final part of the process is to introduce water to the caravan or motorhome, just to make sure that water can be passed through and reach all of the pipes and shower points. If all 3 points have passed, then the product will get a rubber stamp and a very detailed report just saying how well it's performed.
And what's the fastest time anyone's ever achieved this in?
Well, since we started in 2013, we've had times reduced very significantly. We've gone from many passes just under the 4-hour mark to actually last year just having a single axle caravan that completed the test in just 64 minutes.
And do manufacturers always come along with their finished product?
That's certainly how the test started, but what we've actually done in later years is seen manufacturers bring in very early prototypes that will actually never see the light of day in a dealer showroom. The purpose there is to bring them in at an early point and find out where they perform particularly well or where there's some improvements that could be made. Sometimes vehicles come back for 2 or 3 tests just to show the various stages of development.
And is there any difference in the testing between caravans and motorhomes?
Although the standard is the same for both vehicles, we do find very significant differences when we're testing. The front cab of a motorhome is like a heat sink. Because there's such a dense engine area there, it does tend to attract heat away from the living area, which means that they, on general, will take longer to pass a test. And also you have to be very careful in the way that the warm air is moved around the vehicle in a motorhome, particularly at the front end, to make sure that it's also very good for habitation purposes.
So you say people come back and improve them. Surely no one's actually failing these tests anymore?
No, without breaking any confidences, we've had quite a few failures in here. What we tend to find though is that in the way that we actually give information back to the manufacturer, whether that's through thermal imaging or through additional probes that we can add to the 5 that are required by the standard, we can give back a lot of information that can allow them to make changes and modifications to come back maybe only weeks or months later and actually pass with flying colours.
Now, as you can hear from the fans, the test's now underway and it's getting really chilly. Martin mentioned earlier that one caravan passed the test in just 64 minutes, and that caravan was a Bailey Pegasus. So I'm joined by Simon from Bailey. Simon, tell me, how do you go about improving the thermal performance on your caravans?
Hi Alastair, two ways we've looked to do it. With the Alitech construction, we now produce caravans with body shell panels that are about a third thicker than those used in conventional, and obviously that helps with the insulation. And secondly, we've changed the components we used in the panels, so we use a high density polystyrene core, and also we use GRP on the outside instead of aluminium, and that's an insulator as opposed to conductor.
And how much insulation do you put into these caravans?
I'm glad you asked me that. I've got a cross section here of our current Alitech body shell. You've got the side and the ceiling panels here, both 32mm thick, so about a third thicker than traditionally used in a caravan or a motorhome, and the floors are 44mm thick. 44. So.
And has that increased a lot over the years then?
So the panels are about a third thicker than they were perhaps 4 or 5 years ago in the conventionally built product. Also, we've changed the materials we've used. So we've got a higher density polystyrene insulation core, and we use GRP on the outside, which is an insulator as opposed to traditional aluminium, which is obviously a conductor of heat.
Moving inside the caravan, how do you go about eliminating cold spots within the van?
As part of the development process, we now work very closely with the suppliers, in this case it's Truma, not only looking at the insulation of the caravan, but also looking at the heating system, how best to install it and how to get the best out of the heating system. So we spent about 6 months with Truma looking at how we install the system. So we're very much looking at positioning of the heater, positioning of the ducting, etc., whether we route it through inside the caravan rather than outside. So we're very much looking at how we can install it to make it as effective as possible for the customer inside.
So where you put the vents and things like that?
Absolutely right, positioning of vents, positioning of ducts.
Right, so everything's up to temperature. It's minus 15 out here, and it's about 20 degrees inside there. In case you don't believe us, we've brought with us a thermal imaging camera to prove that there's no faking. 1, 2, 3. So now we're in full colour, and I'm nice and yellow because this coat's doing a fair job. Everywhere around is blue, showing just how freezing it is in here. If you look at the caravan, we've got lots of blue where there's insulation, where it's keeping it nice and warm and retaining that heat. And look in the windows and you can see the warmth, the yellow inside, because there's a 35-degree differential between inside and outside. And if you want to see some serious heat loss, it's pouring out of my head. So the caravan's been in the chamber all night. It's getting nice and chilly in there. Before we get too chilly ourselves, we've come into the control room. Martin, tell us what's happening on the computer at the moment.
As you say, the caravan's been in the cold chamber all night. John and I have just got in and satisfied ourselves that all the probes are showing an average of minus 15 degrees. So the next step is we're going to go in and shut all the doors, windows and hatches, and then we're going to pop back into the control room and turn the heating on and start the test.
So what would we expect to see during the test?
So here you see the cooling down period where the caravan probes are getting colder and colder and chilled overnight. Well, as we start the test, what we'd like to see is that the probes should start to climb in temperature from minus 15 all the way up to that magic 20 degrees, well within the time that's prescribed.
So I've just stepped out from the nice cosy confines of the caravan and my nose hairs are freezing. But you can't see that, so I'm going to use a small cup of water to demonstrate just how cold it is out here. And it's just frozen against the wall. Well, I can vouch for the fact that this cold chamber is definitely cold. Martin, is that everything now?
Certainly from the practical test, that's it. The van has passed with flying colours once again.
Good,
Normally,
so can we go back to the hotel now?
Not quite. We thought of something slightly different, and for the first time ever, we'd have a real living test where you and I would bunk down for the night and just prove how you can spend a night, even in a refrigerator like minus 15 degrees, and still be comfortable in a nice caravan.
Yeah, that sounds like a lovely idea. I'll do it, but only if Simon does it as well. He built this thing. He ought to put his money where his mouth is, really, don't you think?
Great idea, great idea.
Simon!
Simon!
Luckily for him, we found Simon. We're inside the van. The fans are on, keeping it very cool outside, and it's already starting to warm up nicely in here, which is great news because it means I don't have to wear that daft hat anymore. But the question remains, guys, what are we going to do for the rest of the evening?
Good point.
I'm glad you asked, Alastair.
That's an outrageous plug, Simon. And I hope you've got something different to wear, Martin. That's not traditional caravanning gear.
No, it's certainly not traditional caravan wear, but this is not traditional caravanning, Al. Sure I can slip into something a little bit more comfortable. I have my PJs with me, and while I'm rummaging for them, I'll see if I can find us a bottle or two to keep us warm this evening.
Very civilised.
Sounds like a very good idea. So what do you do in a cold caravan at night? Or actually a warm caravan in this case? Well, what else but build a Lego version of the same caravan? And welcome back. After literally minutes of work and no errors at any point, no wrong turns, we've produced a perfect miniature caravan. Now, should we go back to the wine?
Indeed.
So, the evening's over. It's now, what time is it, lads?
It's
Nearly
now
4 o'clock in the morning.
Not quite, 2:45.
2:45, not too bad. So I'm going to make up my dream sleep bed and hopefully get a reasonable night's kip for the next 2 or 3 hours till it's time to start all over again. I would point out, however, that it's lovely and warm in here. And I've just been outside in my pyjamas and it's not warm out there. Good night, Simon. Good night, Martin.
Good night, Al.
Sweet dreams. Who was that?
Martin, was that you?
Oh, it's got to be a long night at this rate. Well, everyone's asleep now, and I think it's time for me to turn in too. I'll see you in the morning. Well, good morning everyone. It hasn't exactly been the conventional caravanning holiday, but we have spent a night in a cold chamber. And what have we learnt? Well, I've learnt that modern touring caravans really are usable all year round. What about you, Martin?
I learnt that grown men never tire of building things out of Lego bricks.
This is true.
And I learnt that I really can't play poker to save my life. That's
And
true.
don't forget that you can win a caravan just like this by going to the Truma website. But that brings us to the end of the first part of the show. We'll see you after the break. Truma is giving you the chance to win a brand new Bailey Pegasus. It'll come packed with Truma goodies, making a prize worth up to £25,000. For your chance to win, simply head along to the Truma stand at the NEC Caravan, Camping and Motorhome Show, or visit the Truma UK website where you'll also find full terms and conditions.